A guide to losing customers. 11 foolproof recipes straight from the pros. Hi, my name is Christian Wurzelbauer. I support the textile service industry with management training, now in Textile Service 4.0, and practical hints that you can implement right away. I've already made 2 videos about this, and you can see the playlists linked probably here. The first 2 videos had a very good response, and I think it's a very important topic, and therefore I will continue. And therefore subscribe to the channel and make sure that you get the next videos as well. I'll post a few times a week, and I try to make as valuable videos as possible for the industry. So tip number 5, in order to lose customers, you need to concentrate on costs, because costs are more important than delivery capability and quality. Of course, everybody says that quality and delivery is important, and everybody says that the customer is in focus, but the question is whether this is also the reality. And I had also my experiences myself. For instance, I had management meetings in my company, so we had about 1,000 employees and 7 plants, and there were plant managers, and you had sales directors, and I summoned them a few times a year for a management meeting, and there I held a keynote. And in my keynote I presented, in this case, I think for 15 minutes, issues about quality and why customer satisfaction is important. And then, of course, I made remarks regarding the budget and the forecast, and how also productivity is important. And then a week after, you have always the issue between the sender and the receiver. And when you send a message, it's most probably received in a different way. And it was also this time the case. One sales director called me very upset, and he said he talked to the plant manager. And this plant manager said, "Listen, Mr. Wurzelbauer said that he only cares about productivity, and quality is not the name of the game." And then I had to visit this plant and put the record straight. It's always important that there is the right message, that it's not just about costs, it's actually that customer satisfaction and quality are even more important than cost. And the saying goes, what gets measured gets done. And I think that's important, because when you just measure the costs and you do not measure delivery, fulfillment rates and other stuff, then people focus on costs all the time. And even more in the textile service industry, because when you have a hotel, when you have a restaurant, when you are a hairdresser, whatever, then the customers are omnipresent. So everybody sees the customer all the time. But in the industry that we are in the textile service industry, uniform service, textile service, you have just the drivers and the customer service reps or salespeople that are in constant contact with the customer, and almost everybody else doesn't see the customer at all, or at least not very frequently. So this is then a task for management to bring the attention to the right things that are important. And one thing is that you need to measure and deliver capability, you need to measure quality, and not only productivity and costs. Of course, you need to measure productivity, but this should not be the only thing. And one example is also Amazon. I've studied the letters to the shareholders of Jeff Bezos. I have a compilation of these letters, and I'm teaching also in Webster University a course, and I gave them to the students, and we had a case study. And one thing is of Jeff Bezos, he is mentioning always customer obsession. He is really obsessed about customers. For instance, when they have a meeting, in each meeting you have an empty chair that represents the customer. Or when somebody makes a memo or a suggestion, you have always to refer how this investment, how this initiative helps also customer satisfaction. And therefore, customer focus is really a big priority at Amazon, and it should actually be a big priority in every enterprise. And so measure customer satisfaction. And I want to give you a few very basic examples on how we did it. And if you have other suggestions, then just refer it in the comments and we can have a discussion from there. I'm always open for suggestions. One thing is we had reports from each visit of a sales rep at a customer, and we had a very good schedule. So the big customers were visited actually every month, and the smaller customers either each quarter, half a year, or just once a year. And probably we visited almost every customer at least once a year. So each customer service rep had something like between 50 and 80 or 20, depending on his schedule, visits every month to various customers. And each report had a grading. And the grading was that 1 stands for the customer is really excited about the service and the company, and he will give a testimonial. He is a real ambassador for the company. And 2, he is satisfied. He's not really excited, but he's satisfied. And 3 would be he is having issues. So there are complaints, but he is dealing with these complaints very professional, and we need to work it out. And 4 is he is really annoyed, he is pissed off, and he wants to get these issues resolved immediately. And 5, actually, he is lost. So 5, by definition, is a customer that is already in the termination, and it's really hard and probably not possible to get him back. So this was the grading that we did, and actually it worked very well. So on the one hand, you get quite some data, because when you have a few people visiting the customer, then you get quite some reports each month, and you can make statistics about this. And I had also the order that every report that is graded with 4 and 5 is on my desk. So even small customers came to my attention if they were not satisfied, and I had a discussion with the responsible manager on how to improve the quality there. And for big customers, I was also concerned if they were number 3. So actually this made quite some impact in the organization to focus on this. And the grading calibrates itself very well. So on the one hand, you have service reps that want to put the attention on some issues, and they then grade some customers that are actually 1 or 2 with 3 or 5, 4. In this case, it calibrates because when I myself, as an owner or an managing director, put much emphasis on solving these issues, then he would be embarrassed if this customer has no real problems. So he will just create with 3 or 4 or 5 if there is a real issue. And on the other hand, if he just reports 1 or 2 because he is afraid to show that there are issues with this customer and he wants to avoid, for instance, a conflict with the plant manager, then he has also a risk that when the customer terminates the contract and you then inquire what were the root causes, then he is embarrassed because he has not reported that he was not satisfied. So at the end of the day, it was actually a quite good way to report and measure customer satisfaction. So I can recommend this one very well, and we did it all the time. In one business unit, they made it a different way. So they had just a few customers, very big customers, and they had a team effort to service these customers. So it was the business unit manager, it was a service rep, it was the people in the office, and all of them worked for these few very big customers, in this case pharmaceutical industry. And they then sat down at the meeting, I think it was once a month or twice a month, and in the beginning of the meeting they would grade the satisfaction of their customer, the main customers, with green, yellow and red. And this was actually a very good start for the meeting, and it helped a lot to improve customer satisfaction there. And then we did a customer survey, not in my company back then, but right now in a client that I'm servicing. We made a very simple customer survey, an online survey, and it's cheap and very effective. Of course, you get most responses of customers that want some change and where they have a reason to fill out the survey. So it's not representative, but it gives you very, very valuable information, and you can then improve your service with this input very well. And it's cheap. It costs in some cases nothing, because there are free versions around, and in this case we did it with WordPress and a very easy questionnaire. You can do it even with Google Docs, or you can use some more professional software, and even these softwares, these platforms do not cost much. So it's done very easily and quickly, and you get quite some feedback. And what we did once were customer interviews. We did it just once because it was quite some project. So we had a standard questionnaire, and it took about 20 minutes to discuss this with the client. And in this case, we did the interviews ourselves, and not the sales reps and not the customer service reps. But we have chosen to do it with our plant managers, with the quality manager, with management accounting, actually with IT. So we had about 15 or 20 people who did about 200 interviews with different clients. And this was an extreme success. So on the one hand, you had a standardized questionnaire where they were asked about product quality, about the service of the truck drivers, about IT and interfaces and so on. And on the other hand, the customers also then talked about some issues and some wishes that they had, and interviewers took notes. And the nice thing in this case was that the information was already in the company. So everybody was actually excited to do it, because it was for some of these people the first time actually to see a customer. and for some it was a big responsibility to do it, to do this survey. And on the other hand, it helped also to give the customer a voice in the organization. And then if you do the survey just with salespeople, or if you do it with external staff, then there is a presentation of half an hour of the results, and everybody just listens to it, and nothing changes. But in this case, they did it themselves, and they could relate to the content, and it was a really, really good intervention to get more customer focus into the company. So actually I can recommend it, but it was quite some project, so it was not something that you do besides the normal work. And then we had also meetings of the truck drivers and or service drivers, how we call them. And in these meetings there was one standard agenda point was that that the drivers talked about issues of customers, and there were and this was put into the minutes of these meetings, and we did a follow-up then, and it was very important. And then of course we had complaint bags. I don't know whether this is the right translation. So the customer would put linen or garments that he complains and that he cannot use into a bag and sends it back to the plant, and he would get a credit note for the content of this bag. And of course we have also then the stats of which items are in these bags and what are the causes of these complaints. And actually this was a quite good information, although you have to be careful because you get probably just 20% of the actual complaints, because many customers do not care, and they are just annoyed that there is a stain or a hole, and they give it to the soiled linen. So it's not perfect, but it's a good start. Yeah, so this is actually how we did it at Wurzelbau, and I can recommend this very well. Yeah, and then measure also the quality, and in this case the quality of the delivery, meaning fulfillment rate and timeliness, and product quality. And the delivery quality is probably at least as important as the product quality itself. So my experience is that customers are really, really annoyed if the delivery quality is not satisfactory. And this means that you measure fulfillment rate, but do not measure fulfillment rate overall and overall items and over every customer and just as a sum. We measured fulfillment rate on each line item of each delivery note. So we had a list of all the line items of all the customers, and we measured how we fulfilled each line item. And actually we counted the line items that were not 100%. And this is a better number than when you count, when you just make a ratio of the total fulfillment rate. Because, for instance, if you have table linen that you need to deliver to a customer, and you miss out 100% on one item, then he is really upset and has a big issue with you, with his supplier. But it could seem that you have a good overall fulfillment rate, and you piss off a few customers quite seriously. So be careful to have this stat on each line item, and try to have the customer in mind in this case. And actually we had no real stat about timeliness. We had some statistics that we started to have about whether the truck drivers could leave the plant on time, and this was actually good, but we didn't have a measurement on the timeliness at each customer, which should be possible right now with GPS. And this is actually the requirement. It should be 100% fulfillment rate, and it should be on time. That's the that's the target. And then once the customer gets everything on time, he starts to look at the product quality. And then of course you get the complaints there, if there are any. And so you need to check product quality within the plant and not just from the customer complaints. Of course, you need to analyze customer complaints itself, but this is too late. So you need to take samples out of the in the plant, and then analyze these samples, whether there are stains or holes or whatever. And it takes some time. So if you have a small plant, it takes about 1 or 2 hours a day. If you have a big plant, it could take one or half a person, or even 1 or 2 employees to do it right. It costs some money, but it's important, and it helps you to know it, to know your quality immediately, because with a customer you have a time lag. Yeah. So the customer will not complain for a few weeks because he thinks maybe it's just temporary, or maybe he is just not really, he doesn't care so much about this issue. But once he complains, then of course he is really pissed off. So, but you have a time lag of 3 weeks to 10 weeks before you get the feedback of a product quality issue from a customer. So you need to get the measurement within the plant. It takes some time. It needs also some effort to set it up. But it really improves quality. You can work on quality in a much better way, and you will improve customer satisfaction big time. And at the end of the day, it pays off, because when you have a higher customer satisfaction, then you get also better prices. Yeah, so that's it for this video. I want to encourage you, do not just measure the costs, measure also the customer satisfaction and the quality. And if you like this video, then give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and there's also a link to subscribe to a newsletter. I am sending out valuable information to the industry each week. And you can, if you're an entrepreneur and if you have an issue that you want to talk about, then I offer a free consultation of half an hour, and you can book it also with the link in the video description. See you in the next video. Bye bye.